Welcome to part 4 of Chris and I talking about our 10 years of hunting stuff at night. Let's go with Gucci's to Gucci setups, a mixture of thermal scopes and helmet mounted and binoculars and night vision, etc.
The Gucci. Yeah.
So let's break it down. So we've if you haven't seen part 3 covers thermal scopes by themselves.
Yep.
I want to start off with helmet mounted thermal. Helmet mounted thermal is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
The main benefits and detractors, I think we can cover real quick.
Yeah.
So the main benefit is thermal aids in detection. There's nothing that makes it as easy to tell there is something there, and that species is the species that we're hunting or
Yeah.
allowed to hunt.
Yeah. And especially once you learn how different animals move, you know, I got a bit of a knack for identifying pigs that have somehow turned into raccoons or rabbits or cows once we get a little closer.
Yeah.
And thermal, like how a deer will pick up its whole head or how rabbits hop around versus walking, you know, things like that.
Yeah. But it is there's nothing better than thermal for detection.
Yeah.
The downside of thermal is it's kind of a tiny computer.
Yeah.
And so being a tiny computer, there is a thing that happens called nuking or auto nuking, and it's basically the thermal sensor recalibrating for the temperature ranges that the lens is seeing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that you experience that as a thermal user is that you basically get a still frame for 30 to 60 milliseconds. Maybe it's a lot slower than that or faster, but it's like enough that you notice that the world in the camera or the thermal binocular stopped, which means that it is very difficult to drive under thermal, and it is it's more difficult than night vision to walk under thermal.
Yeah.
And that also has to do with the fact that it's not a perfect 1x magnification, there's a limited field of view, and also temperature differences are not the same as shape differences.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
because it's detecting temperature difference, if something is the same temperature all the way across, it's it may have elevation differences that you don't expect. But there's nothing better for detection. So I love helmet mounted thermal for seeing stuff. Another advantage of helmet mounted thermal is if Chris is over here and I want to scan, I can do this and I can look at him. I can't do that with a thermal mounted rifle scope.
You could. I would not appreciate it.
You would not appreciate it. It would be unsafe. And so it means that if I don't know where everyone is, I can look around and see them because humans also generate heat.
Yeah.
Whereas if I didn't know where everyone was and I only had a thermal mounted rifle scope, I would need to whisper, "Where is everybody?"
Right.
And they would have to respond before I could point my gun in that direction.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big advantages. Even more powerful is a mixture of helmet mounted and gun mounted and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
Chris, can you describe, your ideal setup for 1 or 2 people? And you can pick.
Yeah, and so, and I can go night vision and thermal and mix and match.
Basically your ultimate setup. This is like the pinnacle of, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
What is the setup that if you won the lottery, we would have?
Ooh. Okay. So I'm going to do a 2-person setup, and maybe you can do a 3-person.
Okay.
So yeah, doing a 2-person setup, it's very much having the same loadout on both people is not as good as maybe having a bit of specialization. And so given that everything we do out here involves some degree of movement, whether it's driving to the other side of the ranch, or even just getting across the wheat field or something like that, I like having one person with a night vision, helmet mounted night vision.
Mm-hmm.
So we can drive side by sides with no lights on whatsoever. If you're an electric cart, then you're very, very quiet. Even like last night, we had one person directing movement, so like a hand on shoulder sort of thing, going through a field. And even while you're doing that, that other person has maybe a helmet set up of their own. So I like having one person, helmet mounted night vision, rifle mounted thermal.
Mm-hmm.
And so something probably as low power as you can possibly be, at least for the kind of hunting that we do out here. I'd rather be on that lower side of magnification because I can get closer, whereas trying to get further away while keeping an eye on wherever your target is, that's a harder game to play. And so I like having a driver, helmet mounted night vision, rifle mounted thermal, but on their rifle as well, is IR illuminator and an IR laser. And so what that person is specialized for is I can pull this up and we can both take our own, say that you're only engaging 2 pigs. You guys could pick one each, drop them right there, you're done. But say that you're engaging a sounder, I would rather have the night vision to pop down, do my follow-up shots with my laser, something like that. And that's where my other person would have something that's maybe a bit more powerful, something a bit more, it's going to be heavier naturally, but something like a 308 setup so that their first shot it's a guarantee. And they may not be quite as effective on the follow-up shots, but depending on where we are out here, follow-up
Well,
shots
they might complain if you have to walk a mile.
yeah, exactly. But follow-up shots are, I think I've only engaged once or twice out here where I wasn't able to get a follow-up shot. And so having one person that is almost a guaranteed down right away, one person that can be better on the follow-ups, and that person with rifle-mounted thermal on their 308 also has helmet-mounted thermal in MH25, something like that, where as we're driving around and I'm the one responsible for making sure we don't run into a fence, go into a ditch, anything like that, they get to be doing species identification, they get to be scanning, they get to be saying, hey, I know we're heading over there, but I see a sounder off in the distance here.
Ooh, stop, I found an owl.
Yeah.
Because those are always really cool to look at under night vision.
So somebody who can, both of those people have valuable inputs that can determine a course of action over the night. So like you leave the house saying, hey, we're going to go to the far feeder, check out something like that, but like that doesn't have to be the plan. You can have information that's gained from those setups that can redirect and allow you guys to still be just as effective, maybe just in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that in mind, maybe a 3-person.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to ignore your question, and I'm going to give you my setup.
Perfect.
For interacting with some number of people with some number of equipment.
Okay.
So I think my ideal setup is I have a bridge helmet mounted that allows me to have thermal and night vision.
Wow.
Yeah, so I know that like it might give me a headache to use both, but really it's about having both on the head, hands-free.
Okay.
So I can either be looking for objects for heat signatures, or I could be navigating, etc.
Yeah.
And I think that being able to have all of that together, especially on a mount that allows me to have one or both, means that I only gain, there's only a slightly additional weight if I don't have one of them on, but it gives me the flexibility that I need for what I want. And then I would take the thermal helmet mounted and I would hold it when I'm deer hunting. And people are like, well, why would you, you can't mount it to a gun, what would you do there?
Yeah.
And what I've done for when I've taken the helmet mounted off is I've been taking it up into the deer stand, open the windows, it's pitch black, and I can scan, and I can say, all right, the heat signatures are over there, the deer are probably going to be coming from that direction, that's where I need to be focusing my binoculars when the sun comes up.
Okay.
And one of the things that's important is that antlers don't show heat, and so I still need that light and binoculars in order to be able to make sure I get a proper species identification when I do, doe versus
interesting. Yeah.
So that's what I would have, and then on top of that, I would like to have a thermal mounted rifle scope.
Yeah.
Specifically, you mentioned that 308. Like I think that 308 with a thermal is absolutely lethal combination.
Guaranteed.
But if we're going to be driving around, that 308, even when you're not literally carrying it, it's hard. It's slower to get up on target. It has more recoil, etc. And
even in its probably smallest configuration, which is going to be like a 12-inch barrel, is as small as you'd ever go.
So ours is mine is SBR.
It's just a big gun.
It's still like 10 pounds.
It's just a big gun.
And it's got a titanium silencer, so it's a big gun.
Yeah.
And so for riding around on a buggy, for being on a 4-wheeler, for everything like that, I'm gonna take my Honey Badger 300 blackout suppressed.
Yep.
And I think that having that with an IR laser is a really good lightweight, effective option for if we're going to come up on a sounder of hogs, if we're not going to sit.
Yeah.
And it allows me to be effective in and out of the car very easily. And so I think that is really my order that I would go to.
Okay, interesting.
Yep. And it means that if you and I come out and you left your gear at home, or with it's a last minute trip and you're like, yes, I can come for the weekend, but I didn't bring any of my stuff.
Yeah.
It means that we can still have we can still have a gun with a thermal optic on it, and we can still spot visually, and I can still shoot. So even if my gun doesn't have thermal, it's not that hard to move an IR laser over and get it zero.
I'm glad you ignored the question.
Yeah, there we go. All right,